I wish there would be more content of people being like, hey, we like absolutely screwed this up and here's the 3 lessons I learned.
Video is just a super powerful format for any early stage company, for every MedTech company, because putting your face as a CEO, as a founder to your company creates tremendous trust with your partners, with your customers, with anyone in the market.
He's like, we are still getting leads generated from a webinar that we did 2.5 years ago.
Creating history and multiple touch points with your target customer personas.
I heard someone say, I'm not looking to make content, I'm looking to make customers. I said, I can't think of a better way to cultivate customers than getting content in front of them that they really enjoy, that resonates with them, that captivates them to your brand and your product.
The main question in that market is, how do you get the attention of busy doctors?
And Paul, how would you know like what medical school they went to or where they did their residency? How would you know that?
I mean, that you, for example, can do in Alpha Sophia, yeah, where you search by alma mater, by medical school, where they did residencies, with whom they published together and so on. That's something we could provide.
I was leading the witness there a little bit, but that is like a really cool feature that I like leveraging of Alpha Sophia. 2 mantras I kind of have for sales and marketing, focusing on going deep before you go wide. That's a big one that I've always harp on. The other one is Hey everyone, welcome to the MedTech Innovation Podcast, where we bring you ideas and trends to help you win in MedTech. I'm your host, Spencer Jones, founder at Exo MedTech. I am absolutely thrilled today for our guest, Paul-Lukas Hoffschmidt, founder and CEO at Alpha Sophia. Paul's a serial entrepreneur and the driving force behind Alpha Sophia. It's a cutting-edge commercial intelligence platform for the U.S. healthcare market. I am personally a user. I can vouch for it and say that it is awesome. Paul's passionate about empowering medtech startups and small to medium-sized businesses with data-driven solutions that drive their go-to-market strategies. A little bit more background. Prior to Alpha Sophia, Paul worked as a strategy consultant for Oliver Wyman. He specialized in data-driven enablement within the retail and consumer goods industries, which I think has had a huge role in why Alpha Sophia is built the way it is, and it's so great. But in addition, Paul is an active angel investor in several startups across the domain. So Paul, welcome to the pod. Where do we find you today?
Spencer, first of all, thanks for having me today on the pod. I was really looking forward to that. Today I'm actually based in Cologne, Germany, but our team is quite distributed. So we have people in Switzerland and Germany. My co-founder Isabel is American-German. She splits her time between both continents, between Chicago and Berlin. So yeah, we're quite a diverse and dispersed team across continents, but I'm based in Cologne, Germany. If you ever come across the Atlantic, feel free to stop by and we can have a German Kölsch, which is the local beer here together.
I love a good German Kölsch. It's one of my favorite beers, frankly. But yeah, so I've also never heard American Germ. That's really funny. The American Germ. But like I said, Paul, I'm an Alpha Sophia user. I think it's an amazing platform. I remember way back when I first saw it and I kind of got excited about it. And, it was really early days for you guys. And so it's just been incredible to see the growth that you guys have and kind of rolling out new features, kind of shipping product, expanding, the offering. But so for those in the audience that aren't familiar with Alpha Sophia or intelligent data platforms, like in general, tell us how you help companies with their sales and marketing efforts and what you guys do.
Yeah. So first of all, we set out to build a commercial intelligence platform for the healthcare market, which enables MedTech startups, MedTech companies, but actually want anyone who sells to the US healthcare market and markets to the US healthcare market to find the right physician, the right nurse practitioners, the right providers to market their solutions to. And when we started out, there were a few legacy solutions in the market which were really pricey and inaccessible for startups. Some startups even told us if they reached out to a few of those dinosaurs in the industry, they didn't even get a reply back because they were too small for them. And also those solutions were really siloed, yeah. So you could acquire single lists of procedure billing volumes for a certain code from one of the big companies, or you could buy some contact data somewhere else and you could get some public data on your own by scraping some websites or some registries. But there wasn't that single source of truth you could use as a startup to basically slice and dice the market as you were thinking about the market, as you were testing different hypotheses and so on. And we set out to build that single point of truth, which enables you to slice and dice that industry as you would think in your commercial and development process, and then make that accessible to companies in the field at a price which is accessible to a much wider audience.
The number of emails that I get that are like, hey, do you want to buy this email list of these surgeons and whatever? And they're charging, for what it is, astronomical rates, even for those lists. I've also seen, a lot of the other platforms, and they are great, but like I've always said, like, what early stage startups are affording this? And it's also something I don't think startups have like really budgeted for historically, but they should be. Right? They should be thinking about this early on. But you're so right. Like, I love that phrasing, single source of truth, because truly be a single source of truth at every moment in time, right? You have to be dynamic. You have to be updating your data on a regular basis, right? Or else, truth may be true now, but in 6 months, right? Things may have changed, right? Procedural volumes may have changed.
Yeah.
Physicians may have changed locations, all of that stuff. So I know your background, is on the strategy consulting side in retail and CPG. So I'm just curious kind of what caused you to make the jump into the MedTech space when you did.
Yeah, so actually, Robin, my other co-founder, we both worked at Oliver Wyman in the retail space, and we consulted those big multinational consumer retail companies, which obviously generate billions of rows of data every day. As you go to the checkout in a supermarket and pay, you're basically creating hundreds of rows of data. And we worked for those companies building data models for them to predict the best everyday commercial optimizations. Like, for example, do I give a discount for a certain product on a certain date? Yeah, because historically we know on that date, I don't know, before Thanksgiving, for example, it makes sense to discount those products, and then you have maybe a bundling effect with other products which you don't discount, and then in total you increase basket size and so on. There's a lot of analytics going on there. And when we started Alpha Sophia, we looked at the healthcare market and actually thought and compared, are there commercial strategies which are already present for years in the consumer retail industry, which is a few years ahead, which are not present in the healthcare industry yet. And we saw that in general, analytics on the commercial side in the healthcare industry is, to our understanding, a few years back. And that's one driver. And the other driver is if you talk to the people working at big MedTech, for example, at those billion-dollar companies, of course, they have already established whole business intelligence teams and data science teams who worked on exactly that, building their own single point of truth within the company. But of course, that's not feasible if you have 5, 10, 50 people company in the beginning. You won't hire a team of 10 people. So we wanted to build something which gives those innovators a similar type of toolbox, but I sometimes call it like a BI department in a box. Yeah, so you get access to that and you get capabilities to the extent of what a Johnson & Johnson or Strike, you name it, would have, but you just get it out of the shelf. You don't need to have a data science background to actually start getting insights out of that.
Yeah, I think it's putting it lightly to say that the commercial analytics side in MedTech is years behind. I feel like MedTech, for all its glory and for all of the things that I love about it, there are countless kind of verticals or areas within MedTech that are just years behind. You look at some of the marketing stuff that's done, and some of it's because it's very hard to do, right? There's a lot of data inaccessibility, right, within it. It's, there's a lot of things that are much less publicly available, but I think a lot of the times too, like in MedTech, your hands are a little bit more tied on what you can do because it's such a regulated industry that, like, years behind, I would say in some instances a decade behind, right? What kind of the traditional B2B SaaS or tech industries, are seeing in terms of like progressive analytics, business intelligence advancements. So I fully appreciate that.
And there's also some good reason for that. I mean, if you look at a typical MedTech startup, they often get founded out of, I don't know, it's maybe a physician founder teaming up with an engineer, and they're for quite a long time they're in R&D mode. The most important thing that matters is developing a product which actually solves a problem for patients, and then refining that product, getting regulatory approval for that, and so on. So there's quite a long span until you actually go into that commercial mode. And obviously you build up a team which is really product development and regulatory focused. And then at some point when, I don't know, 2 years, 1 year ahead of a potential regulatory approval, you suddenly start thinking more and more about how do you actually roll that out. Because the best innovation doesn't have an impact on the real world if you don't get it into mass adoption eventually. So that's the point in time where those companies have to make that pivotal step of getting into that commercial mode. And that, of course, is a hard problem. Yeah? If you don't have that commercial DNA in your company from day one, as compared to like a consumer goods company, where that is something they start thinking about from day one. And often that requires getting a more granular understanding of the market and then actually understanding, where do I actually want to place my first commercial hires? Yeah? Is that region better or that region better? What could be a good go-to-market strategy? Do I market directly to physicians, or do I want to mainly talk to healthcare systems? Some digital health companies actually go direct to patient and so on. So there's a lot of decisions to be made and things to consider, and that's quite a hard problem. And you always keep that big problem of having a product, which is amazing. Yeah,
you're 100% right. Like the technical challenge of building a product and getting through the regulatory and the clinical trials and all that, like it's almost like, distracting just from a sheer standpoint of like how much time it takes and the skill set it takes. But you were talking about kind of understanding the market, right? Like the CPG is so consumer and market focused really out of the gate, and in a lot of ways, a lot of those products take less time, right, to develop, and there's less regulatory hurdles. But like it's almost kind of market research, customer discovery about your customers in your market, because most of the time when you're seeing MedTech companies pitch their solution, they're raising money, they're doing whatever, they're talking about there's 10,000 of these surgeons in the US, and it's like, okay, great, like how do you stratify those? Like who are actually targets and who are not? Like how many are doing more than X number of procedures a year? And like I feel like there is a lack of granularity across the board with a lot of the MedTech startups. I've seen them just really having this top-down market and this top-down go-to-market strategy, when in reality, like it should be bottom-up. You should be like understanding who's not your customer, right? They could be like, in a broad sense, your customer, right? They're a orthopedic surgeon or whatever. But when you really slice and dice it, like you said, like they're not really a viable customer for you. They're either not doing enough cases, or they're doing them at the wrong surgical side, or they're part of a system that is just like, for whatever reason, contractual purchasing, you name it, or they're just not going to be a customer for you. So I feel like startups, like they need to put that timeline of when they start thinking about market intelligence and market research. They need to move that way up, because it'll help affect their product, their pricing strategy, the way they communicate value propositions, all of that, right?
What I think is the best-in-class MedTech startups actually start 1 to 2 years before regulatory approval for their product, starting to refine their commercial playbook and to plan their commercial rollout, and then actually start marketing before they get regulatory approval, because you actually want to hit the ground running when you actually hit that milestone. But before that, already start warming up those key opinion leaders, those early adopters and so on, so that you don't start with that warm-up process when you get there. We all know it takes time and multiple touch points for those providers to actually develop an interest in the product, and that's not something which can happen overnight.
Yeah, and I know if there's some regulatory consulting people, right, were you saying market it before approval, their probably ears or the hair on the back of their neck standing up. But what you're really saying there, right, is developing relationships, building relationships, right, like cultivating interest in the technology. You're not asking them to buy it. You're not asking them to commit to buy it, right? It's all building relationships.
It's building relationships. And in the beginning, when I say marketing, it's not marketing the product, which is not yet approved. It's marketing the scientific background, which then is the foundation of the product you are aiming to sell at some point. Raising awareness for a new type of methodology or of scientific findings, which you then can later refer to and say, okay, that's something which was found in studies some time ago, and now we are building on that with a commercial product which can actually be used to help patient lives. But having that foundation helps you so much later on, because then you don't have to start with zero.
It's so true. It's so true. I did this poorly at, the first product I launched. We were kind of like, oh, we really can't start marketing, which is technically true. You can't start marketing the product, but you can start marketing the value you believe you can bring and the scientific data that you have, and building those relationships. You have to, right? Like, because if it's a 6 to 9 month to a year sales cycle, like you can build that relationship and cut that down a lot, right?
And Spencer, actually, many of our customers actually use our solution not only for commercial marketing, but actually for clinical trial recruiting. So finding the people to participate in your clinical trials who might then join you on your medical board, become outspoken about the trials you are conducting and so on. So it's not always about selling. especially in the early phase. It's not a sales conversation in the beginning, but it's an education conversation, and you want to have that conversation as soon as possible.
Yeah, for sure. So I want to really try to like dig in a little bit on like the tactical pieces of go-to-market strategies and really like leveraging a platform like Alpha Sophia. So, we live in an attention economy, right? And I truly think engaging with physicians and healthcare providers has never been more difficult. And you could go through the list of reasons, right? But, in your view, how can MedTech companies, garner and hold the attention of busy docs, and like what role does Alpha Sophia play in that?
Yeah, you just said it. The main question in that market is, how do you get the attention of busy doctors? There's no silver bullet answer to that. Just go down that route and then everyone will listen to you. I think the answer is always creating history and multiple touch points with your target customer personas. And to do that, you first have to understand who's your customer persona. Could be orthopedic surgeons only working in ASCs and not in hospitals, or the ones doing both, or the ones who are only in hospitals but don't yet work with those larger competitors you might have. The ones who publish a lot, don't publish a lot. The ones who do a lot of research, don't do that. The ones who are interested in new innovations. So how can you find those more innovation-prone physicians who are interested in looking at new stuff and so on? First step is really segment your market and try to understand the different cohorts of different types of providers and figure out who's your best fit audience for the very beginning. And then secondly, understand those cohorts better. Yeah? So profile them. What do they have in common? What do they don't have in common? And where are they active? Can you only reach them by walking into their office and trying to get those 2 minutes of airtime with them? Or are they also active on social media, for example? Can you find them on LinkedIn, on Twitter? Do they have doximity profiles where you might have a chance to interact with them through your physician, key opinion leaders, work with your company, and so on? So you want to find the different touch points where you can meet them, conferences they attend, and then start creating a holistic plan to basically nurture them across those different channels and start creating touch points to slowly warm them up and make them aware of your product.
Yeah, I was just going to say, like, I think segmenting the market, that like stuck out to me. Like you were saying, orthopedic surgeons, right? So maybe you're focused on ASC. So it's orthopedic surgeons in the ASC. Well, maybe you have a knee solution. So the guys that are doing 90% hips, that's not really your jam, right? You need to be focusing on the knees, right? Well, maybe you're trying to come up with a more profitable solution that kind of replaces like arthroscopy and knee scope type thing. So then you're going to target the people that are doing that the most. So like you could tell the same message to 100 docs, but those 20 that are really, really in the segment that you care about most, right? It's going to resonate completely differently with them, right? Versus somebody else. I think another thing I love about Alpha Sophia is, say you've got a solution that directly competes with, Medtronic or Stryker, right? Or something like that. You may not want to try to be barking up the tree with a surgeon that's gotten, 2 million in payments and consulting fees and all this stuff from Medtronic and Stryker, because they're just going to have a really, really good relationship with them, right? So maybe you're targeting people that haven't gotten, a lot of basically consulting work, because like it's not about the dollar amount. It's more just about like they're going to have really strong relationships if they've been working in like a surgical consulting, medical consulting collaborative relationship with those people. So that like segmenting the market, who's in it, who's not in a given segment, it's like so valuable. It's so valuable. So 2 mantras I kind of have for sales and marketing, focusing on going deep before you go wide. That's a big one that I've always harp on. And I'm meaning, in a territory, in a given, with your go-to-market, right? You want to get high penetration in a smaller number of accounts versus, really low utilization across more accounts, right? The other one is just telling a compelling story. Right? You really have to like win them over, almost personally, but also with kind of the ethos of your product and the value that it's bringing and why it's different, and kind of the what, why framework, right? What are you doing and why should they care? So those 2 things, going deep before you go wide and tell a compelling story. Those are the drums that I beat relentlessly to anybody that'll listen. So what are some tips or cheat codes, that you recommend, for MedTech sales and marketing teams? Like, are there any mantras or, kind of sales and marketing, principles that you live by?
Yeah. So let me double down on your second point about crafting a compelling story. Of course, that's key, but I would even spin it further, where you try to craft compelling stories which mass personalize to the different cohorts you're marketing to. So in the best case, you segment your ICP customer cohort in a way, you then find out okay, this little bucket of potential targets, you craft individual messages for them, which are more likely to resonate with them than crafting one message which you send out to 10,000 physicians the same way. And it can be simple stuff like you find out of all your potential early adopter targets, there is a cohort of 200 which went into the same alma mater as one of your KOL physicians. And then you might want to craft a message towards them where you have a quote from that KOL as a reference in there. And then you do something else for a different cohort. So you want to be as specific and hyper-personalized as possible. And that only goes when you try to do both. Try to nail it down to the ones who share certain characteristic, but then tell the compelling story in reference to that characteristic.
Yeah. And Paul, how would you know like what medical school they went to or where they did their residency?
I mean, then you, for example, can do an Alpha Sophia, where you search by alma mater, by medical school, where they did residencies, with whom they published together, and so on. So that's something we could provide.
I was leading the witness there a little bit, but that is like a really cool feature that I like leveraging of Alpha Sophia.
Yeah. I mean, going one step back when we talked about moving into that commercial mindset for a MedTech company, or actually all the questions MedTech startups typically ask themselves across the journey. I mean, I can also just highly recommend using XO MedTech. I think what you've built there as a resource set, as a knowledge base, with that interactive community behind that, is really powerful for any innovator in the MedTech space to learn from each other, because, I mean, the problems faced are so comprehensive and difficult that it just makes sense learning from the mistakes and learnings of others and then building on that.
I appreciate that, and what you hit on there, kind of learning from each other's mistakes. I feel like if you look at design and tech and these other kind of industries, like they are so out in the open with what they're building and what they're doing and the strategies they're using and the tactics. And like, I feel like MedTech, for whatever reason, is the complete opposite. No one wants to talk about what they're doing. It's all cloak and dagger. It's all close to the chest, close to the vest. And I really don't know why. I don't know how it got like that, but I really do think it's at the detriment, specifically to early stage innovators and kind of like new founders, to where, because like no one's talking about what they're doing or the lessons learned or the ways that they failed. It's all press releases about how great things are and this accomplishment that they had. And it's just like, I wish there would be more content of people being like, hey, we like absolutely screwed this up and here's the 3 lessons I learned, right? Like that would go so much farther. I think, a lot of people in MedTech will hear, omni-channel marketing and think like that means going to more conferences and buying more banner ads, right? But just from your perspective, kind of what does omni-channel marketing mean to you? Do you think it's important? Because it's a term I've been seeing thrown around a lot lately.
Yeah, I think it's super important. But like with all those mantras, it's about actually doing it. And it could be going to more conferences. It could be buying more banner ads. It could be going all in on LinkedIn. It could be finding a niche forum where your customers get together. But I think the importance of actually nailing it with omnichannel marketing is to constantly test, analyze, and then discontinue what didn't work and a lot will not work, and then double down on the things that work, and then continuously reiterate in that process where you test and test and test, and have group A, group B, where you slightly change the marketing narrative, where you slightly change the banner ad, where you slightly craft a different message via email, via LinkedIn, and so on, and then figure out those channels that work. It requires constant testing, constant analysis to actually make that work. And I think that's the step where it often gets difficult for many commercial teams to actually do that every day and constantly improve through little steps every day.
Yeah, it's a huge grind. And I think too, whenever I'm thinking about omni-channel marketing, I really think the different channels, right, that are within that omni-channel framework can be targeted at very different things, right? You can have some that are for top of the funnel lead generation, some that are just brand and audience building, right? Like you're really trying to cultivate a really strong brand identity, like on LinkedIn, right? Then there are some that are for conversion, right? Some channels where you're trying to convert, you're trying to move them from top of the funnel, mid funnel, through the funnel. And I think like sometimes even that, like I've talked to some MedTech companies and like, they're like, right, but how is that going to generate me business tomorrow? And I'm like, well, is brand important? I heard someone say, I'm not looking for content, I'm looking for customers. Or I'm not looking to make content, I'm looking to make customers. I said, I can't think of a better way to cultivate customers than getting content in front of them that they really enjoy, that resonates with them, that captivates them to your brand. and your product, right? Like, so I still even think within MedTech too, like there's this gap where some people just don't understand the link between high trust, high authority content and how that can help develop not just your brand, but like cultivate and develop customers out of that.
Yeah, and that's, I mean, everyone wants customers tomorrow. That's the secret wish of every commercial leader. The truth is that it often takes more time to start planting things and then see as they grow. And there are some channels which can be super successful, but would just take time to start flourishing, like content initiatives, for example, like getting into conversations, being known for certain technology, for certain disease,
for sure,
and so on. So, and you also can't always only focus on long-term stuff. So it's probably a combination of both, where you have to be really disciplined to do both at the same time, playing the long-term game and the short-term game at the same time, because doing only one will probably kill you as a company. And that's that would be too sad after going so much struggle to actually bring that product to market.
Yeah, that's so true. Just final point on this, I'll move on to the next question. But like, you know, if you've got like a really, really strong brand, right, on LinkedIn, because LinkedIn, we know surgeons are going to LinkedIn to find information, to find new stuff to use, etc. Like, you may have never had like a direct touch point with a surgeon, but they've just consistently seen your stuff and really liked it and engaged with it on LinkedIn. So the next time when they're going down that aisle at a conference and they see your booth, right, you finally do get a direct touch point from a sales rep and they see that it's a product that they're familiar with, that brand. Like, they're going to be so much more likely to respond to that email, to take a meeting, to stop by that booth, because you've built brand trust, even though there was nothing direct right there yet, right? So I think like that's the long-term game that helps impact that short-term game, right?
100%.
You got to do both. So building any software company is difficult. I've never built kind of a full-fledged software company, you know, but I got to imagine the massive, complex data sets and data partners involved in building Alpha Sophia had to be incredibly challenging. So just like open-ended question here, just tell us about that journey, building the product and having to work with those massive data sets and data partners.
Of course, it's super challenging because you basically have to bring everything together at one point and serve it to our users. I think the most challenging problem in our business is to create one interlinked data set. I mentioned that in the beginning, where you can get access to public registries, to social media extracts, to websites of physicians, you can partner with clearinghouses to get access to claims data. You can partner with CMS to get access to their data and so on. But it's also all siloed, And the importance to get that extra value out, you really need to attribute that. You need to find out that Dr. Spencer, is the same one who has that LinkedIn profile, who runs that website, who's affiliated with those different healthcare organizations and so on. So interlinking all that is probably the most challenging problem on that side. And then getting back to your previous point about building brand, I think one thing we did right from the beginning was to go actually all in on content, on publishing on social media, building a brand there for our company. And that actually has not only helped us on the commercial side, but also helped us on the partnering side to partner with really great partners on the data side, for example, who of course saw us building that audience and saw us how deeply we try to engage in the MedTech conversation and how we try to build something which is truly innovative, and they wanted to join us and support us on that journey. So that has not only helped us on the commercial side, but actually as a company as a whole, and that continues to help us. And also on the commercial side, I mean, we're not a MedTech business, but we do have that same phenomena where we at some point get into a sales conversation with a person who then tells us, actually the first time I heard, I don't know, maybe in a few months down the road, they tell us the first time I heard about you was when you joined Spencer on his podcast. And then I actually didn't think about needing at that point in time, but I followed you on LinkedIn, saw what you were building and so on. So that has helped us a lot.
Yeah, no doubt. There's a quick data point here, just talking about podcasts, videos, webinars, all of that stuff. One of our XO founding sponsors, Root Quality Systems, so Kyle, who's their CEO, he like leaned in on this early and he was like, we have webinars that we did 2 or 3 years ago, they can see the traceability on where people are coming to them from. And he's like, we are still getting leads generated from a webinar that we did 2.5 years ago, right? So like that kind of evergreen brand building content, especially video these days, like it really does have like a drip factor and kind of a multiplier that's kind of sits in the background and it's hard to quantify, but like really, really, really matters. So trends to win in MedTech is what we're all about here at XO MedTech. So what are some trends that you're seeing in healthcare, healthcare and MedTech commercialization these days that you can share with the audience?
Before I reply to that, you mentioned video. And I think I just want to give you a quick reply on that. I think video is just a super powerful format for any early stage company, for every MedTech company. Because putting your face as a CEO, as a founder to your company creates tremendous trust with your partners, with your customers, with anyone in the market. Because you're not one anonymous account executive at one of those dinosaur legacy companies, but people who work with you know you can call up Spencer if you have a problem, and he will make sure that this problem is being addressed. And that gives you a gigantic advantage in the early phase. Of course, you can't maintain it forever, but using that unfair advantage as much as possible and as long as possible is just a shortcut to creating tremendous customer trust. And I can really recommend it to anyone actually across industries building a company doing that.
Yes, real quick point too on that. I've seen this. I don't do this enough, but I want to start doing it more. But I've seen this be so effective when, whether you're like DMing someone on LinkedIn, you're sending someone an email, just recording. I like to use Loom. It's super easy to record. I know you like Looms as well, but just shoot a quick Loom. It usually takes less time than crafting some huge big email. Shoot a quick Loom, say their name. People love hearing their own name. It's their favorite word in the English language. Talk to them like a human. Tell them what you're interested in, how you guys could collaborate, how you could help them, what you want to know about them, their business, whatever. Just shoot them that quick Loom and say, hey, I shot a quick video, 2 minutes. Would love to, if you could watch it and like, let me know what you think. You're going to get a response so much at a higher clip with doing that than you are just sending cold emails. And obviously that's not like massively scalable, but the few times that I've done it and the ones that I've received, I'm like, this person shot me a video. I have to respond to them. You know what I mean?
I mean, that's the reality of every company. You always have to do stuff where you know from the beginning that's not what you're going to do in 10 years time. If you only try to do things which work at scale, you never get to scale. In the beginning, it's just about making every customer successful. I mean, you want to do that forever, but you really may want to make sure you're really close to those customers, understand their pain points. There might be things where you might want to adjust the product to move from 95% addressing their use case to 100%, and really nailing it. And then over time, you build up those really successful customers, which are references, and then it's much easier for you to get in the door with the next one and the next one and the next one.
I'm so with you. I don't understand. I feel like there was like an obsession with like, you can only do things that are scalable. And it's like, like it's a hand-to-hand combat. It's a knife fight, right? While you're trying to get critical mass. And the other bet you're making on is that like, we will know perfectly what the scalable tactics are specifically for our business before we've even gone through like an initial adoption phase. So you're kind of making two dumb bets in my mind. You just have to do what works and then figure out how to make that scalable later. So totally agree. But back to the question, trends to win in MedTech. What are some trends in healthcare and MedTech commercialization you're seeing these days?
I think, and I can only speak about the commercial side, I think one thing which is happening globally actually, and I just posted about that today on LinkedIn, is that more and more MedTech companies across the world start on the US market first. I think the FDA is getting, always was, but more and more also for European companies is the gold standard for approval, and companies go to the US first. I think that trend is going to continue, and that makes the US healthcare market, which is already the most important market in the world, even more important, especially for young innovators. So it gets more and more important for every MedTech company, no matter where you're located, whether you're in Asia, whether you're in Europe, whether you're in Latin America, whether you're in Africa, to start thinking about the US market early on, get an understanding of the complexities of that market, and build your strategy on how you can launch on that very complex market. So I think that's one trend which is regulatory driven, especially by the medical device regulation in Europe, which has gotten slower over the course of the last years due to some changes. So I think that trend is going to continue. And then secondly, I think as in every market, I think commercial strategy of the past work less and less. Just going to conferences and just using the Rolodex of one hired VP of sales you hire for the US market, that works less and less because, as I mentioned earlier, more and more products are going to penetrate the US market, more and more solutions for same therapeutic areas, same diseases. And there's a limited set of conferences where you can meet those people. There's a limited set of people with long Rolodexes, which you can leverage to get those people. And those people who carry the bag have more and more products in their bag. So the attention is not getting bigger. It's probably even getting smaller as the pressure on the healthcare system is getting bigger. So you really need to make sure to stand out and be unique in your story you tell to your potential customers. And the only way to do that is to be hyper-personalized in a way which you can roll out to different customer groups quickly. And the only way to get there is through data, in my opinion.
Yeah, amen. The stuff that worked 10, 15 years ago, it's not working the same today. And with MDR in the EU, like you said, it's getting the US market is kind of the first and best option right now for startups to be attacking. I'd love the sequela of that, kind of the downstream effects of like more people going to the US market first. I hadn't really heard it put that way, but it is putting more pressure. There's more volume of products and solutions and innovations that's increasing the competitiveness of the US market. So that's a really interesting point there. So last question here, I feel like there are so many pieces on the chessboard, right, for MedTech innovators to learn, and the knowledge of the MedTech landscape is just really critical, like knowing all of those things, some of the stuff we've been talking about today. So like coming out of that like CPG background, right, like how did you go about acquiring the knowledge that you did with respect to the US MedTech landscape and, being able to navigate it effectively? How did you do that? What would you recommend for early stage innovators kind of looking to build that knowledge, looking to do the same?
So before we started building anything in our company, I think we talked to 150 sales and marketing experts in the US, operational sales leaders, but also single reps, distributors, anyone in that industry who's engaging in that work and facing those problems every day. And I think that's the single best thing you can do. Just talk to your potential customers.
Customer discovery.
Yeah, just talk to them.
Another drum I beat.
I can still remember. So in mid 2022, I think it was August 2022, when we started doing that, I sent out my first 200 cold messages on LinkedIn to VP of sales, regional sales managers of MedTech companies, and got the first reply, jumped on a call 20 minutes later with that person. And we talked for 35 minutes on the phone. And he just told me about how he's currently working, what he's currently using, what's not working, how data is currently dispersed in his company. He actually worked for a big MedTech company, which we know do have access to all of those data points in some shape or form, but he just couldn't get access to that for his team. And then we continued having those conversations and then building our product really, really close to the use cases we discovered back then, and we continue to do that. So we continuously feedback from the voices of the customer we hear into our product roadmap and then prioritize based on that.
Yeah. That's awesome. I mean, we talk about on this podcast and all the time, customer discovery, how valuable it is. You can't build a product without it. You know what I mean? Like you may be building a product, but you're not going to be building the product that your customers want unless you're talking to them and getting that feedback. So, literally could beat that drum all day. Quick plug also. We've got a customer discovery template. It's a little spreadsheet. We've got the Google Sheet in Exo MedTech for people that want to have a very quantifiable, for the quantitative and qualitative as well, but a way to document, analyze all that stuff. And we're actually about to put out a video pretty soon about using a little bit of kind of AI magic note taker plus that template to automate that process so you can do solo interviews, get that information, documented, transcript, analyzed, and kind of spit out with some cool stuff. So that is coming soon. But Paul, I know we've both got things to hop to. I can't thank you enough for joining the pod. We will put in the show notes, a link to Paul, your LinkedIn, Alpha Sophia's, the website, and anything else, any other ways to get in touch with you. Any parting thoughts of wisdom for the audience here?
Yeah, I think as the last point, I think we are all in a really exciting industry. I mean, the speed of innovation, despite all the hindering factors, which makes things a bit slower in the industry, is still quite enormous. I mean, every conference I visit, I'm just astonished by the innovations which are in the pipeline. So I'm really optimistic about the future. I'm really looking forward to that. I think we will live in a healthier world in 5-10 years from now, and that's super exciting. And I think we are both quite happy to work in that industry and do our little bit to support that, helping this innovation get out to patients faster.
Agreed. So if you're listening, whether you're just getting started, you're an emerging pre-commercial company, or you're a large and growing and scaling medtech company, you need to check out Alpha Sophia. I want to give my personal endorsement for it. It's fantastic, but it needs to be a part of your go-to-market plan development and the execution. So just wanted to say, if you haven't checked out Alpha Sophia yet, go do it now. Paul, thank you so much for being on the pod. Everybody in the audience listening, thanks for joining us, and hope everyone has a great day. Take care.
Thank you, Spencer. Thank you.